Hi there, I'm Amanda Castor with Material Girl Quilts. Today I'm here to share with you a new quilt tutorial called Quarter Stack. It's another fat quarter friendly pattern, and it's really great because it's easily adjustable depending on how many fat quarters you have to use. So from the photos you saw in the intro, this quilt behind me finishes at 80 inches square and it used 23 fat quarters. And this quilt on the table, it finishes at 60 inches square and used 13 fat quarters. So as I said, it's easily adjustable depending on how many fat quarters you have, or if you need a certain size quilt, you can scrounge up some fat quarters to make it work. I also love this pattern because it's like a scrappy look quilt, but if you buy a fat quarter bundle from a collection, it's still very cohesive and it looks beautiful. This is another simple, beginner-friendly quilt, but I think even all experienced quilters will enjoy putting it together. So let's get started. In the printable pattern that's included in the video description below, it will include a diagram for how to cut your fat quarters, but I'm going to go ahead and show you a method that I think works really well. So the fat quarter should be 22 inches long by at least 18 inches wide. So a quicker way to cut this is we can fold this along the long edge, the 22-inch length, in half, and then cut our 2.5-inch strips this way. So you'll want to make sure that your straight edges here are lined up, and you can, I prefer to fold like this because we don't need quite as long a ruler to make these cuts. You can use, there's a lot of rulers for cutting 2.5-inch strips. There's a stripology ruler and all kinds of things, but I do prefer this Creative Grids ruler. It's got a 2.5-inch mark right here that makes it nice and handy. And you will cut a total of 7 of these from the width. And you'll see you just have this little strip left over. Now once these are cut into 2.5-inch strips, you will then need to subcut each of these 7 into 2.5-inch by 10.5-inch rectangles. So, and this ruler is also great for that because we have a 10.5-inch mark here on the ruler. So there's 1 and 2 from each of these strips. And as you'll see at the end of these strips, there's very little waste. So you'll repeat this process and cut a total of 14 2.5-inch by 10.5-inch rectangles from each fat quarter. To piece your blocks for this quilt, you need to select 5 2.5-inch by 10.5-inch rectangles from various prints and colors so that we can mix it together and make it look a little bit scrappy. And you'll lay them out as shown and sew all of the strips together to make your block. And here is a completed block. And once they're all sewn together, this will measure 10.5 inches square. When I pressed the seams for my blocks, I went ahead and pressed them open because as I'm piecing these blocks, I'm not sure where they will end up within the quilt, so I won't be able to nest my seams in any certain way. So I found it simplest to just press them open so that once I put all of the blocks together, the seams will be nice and flat. So again, here is your finished block, finishing at 10.5 inches square. You will repeat this process to make the total number of blocks you need for your desired size of quilt. The quilt I am making, I will need 64 blocks total, and it finishes at 80 inches square. As previously stated, you can make this quilt in many different quilt sizes. I'll show you some options here. With 6 fat quarters, you can make a 40 by 40 inch quilt. With 8 fat quarters, you can make a 40 inch by 50 inch quilt. With 9 fat quarters, you can make a 50 inch square quilt. With 11 fat quarters, you can make a 50 inch by 60 inch quilt. With 13 fat quarters, you can make a 60-inch square quilt. With 15 fat quarters, you can make a 60 by 70 quilt. With 18 fat quarters, you can make a 60 by 80 quilt. And with 20 fat quarters, you can make a 70 by 80 quilt. And finally, the largest size that I made, with 23 fat quarters, you can make an 80 by 80 inch quilt. As a reminder, there's a printable PDF pattern linked in the video description below, as well as all of the materials I used to make these quilts. If you enjoyed this pattern, and I hope you did, and you want to make your own, I would love to see it. Please tag me on social media at Material Girl Quilts and use the hashtag #QuarterStackQuilt. Thank you so much for watching, and see you next time.